monstrosity. Boy, that flew. Well, sometimes when they're hit, they stay hit. Kieran Tierney.
Welcome to After Extra Time, the World Football Podcast, part of the Edge of the Crowd podcast network. I'm Stuart Kavanagh, and this is the place to be for the big news, the big names, and the big games. Paul can't join us this week as he's moving house, but I have a more than capable co-host this week. He is a fellow Liverpool fan, just like myself, so it should be happy days here tonight. Let me introduce you all to Mr. Callum Logie.
Yeah, hey there. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here, and happy to, as I said before we started recording, happy to have a natter about football. It's been a while since I've been able to. I'm Callum Logie. I'm a writer for Edge of the Crowd. I mainly write basketball articles, but I also dabble in a few other sports. I've written an article pertaining to Sam Kerr being on the FIFA cover, so that was a fun one to write. And I'm also on the Top Edge podcast, which goes out every week. If you want to hear about cricket, then that's a nice place to go have a listen. And I've been, a lifelong football fan. I played since the under sixes. I was scared of the ball, so I wasn't excellent at it. I kind of started following the EPL a bit closer when I moved from Australia to India. So I moved overseas from Australia to India when I was 10 years old. So it was about 2008.
Wow.
And basically the coverage of the Premier League games over there was so much better than it was over here. So India's about 5.5 hours behind Australian Eastern Standard Time. So as such, I'd get the English afternoon games in the early evening for me, and I get the evening games in nighttime, 7-8 o'clock. So I got to watch most of the match days, and that really garnered my love for that league. And my dad was a Liverpool fan, so I adopted that, and I idolized Fernando Torres. I wanted to grow my hair out like his. I wanted to wear headbands. It was
El Nino, classic Liverpool striker. And I know this is an audio medium, but I'm just going to tell all the listeners out there, unlike myself, Callum has a lovely head of hair. He could have pulled off the Fernando Torres look if he wanted to. It is time for the winners and losers segment. And Callum, we're very polite around here. Guests go first. So please, can you give me your big winner in the world of football this week?
I sure can. So my winner in the world of football this week is Brentford.
Wow.
Brentford have only lost one game in the Premier League so far this season. Very impressive. In this quite condensed match week, we had midweek games and we had weekend games. They managed to get 4 points, and pretty good ones in the scheme of things. They got a 5-2 win against Leeds at home, and I know Paul really likes Leeds, so that's
Leeds,
a pretty good
United
result
States
there.
of America, he calls them.
Exactly. That's the squad. So he probably won't be too pleased about that result. But Brentford played really well in that. The Ivan Toney hat trick, obviously the big story there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also got an away draw against a very tough Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace fans are full on. The reason I know this is because a few years ago I went to a QPR Crystal Palace match. It was a QPR home game. The Crystal Palace fans were louder, quite dramatically.
Wow.
So if you're playing at Crystal Palace, you're definitely going to be hearing it from the fans. So good on them for keeping their composure and managing to get a solid point there.
What a way to endear yourself to our listeners. This is famously a B-Lever podcast. We love the Bs here on After Extra Time. So that's a fantastic winner. Great shout too. The Ivan Toney hat-trick was fantastic. And, you say the point against Crystal Palace was tough. And Crystal Palace are a great team. Patrick Vieira's really got them purring at the moment. The win over Leeds, Jesse Marsh and Leeds have been doing quite well as well. So really just a really above average week for Brentford. 4 tough points. I'm sure they probably would have been happy with 2.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they'd have been okay with 1 draw and a loss as well, but no, they played really, really well. They played really positively against Leeds, and that was the big difference maker. I think their they're really liking having the stage, the bigger coverage and that sort of thing. And I think they're really showing it with their performances.
This is going to make me feel dirty. It's going to make you feel dirty by association. But we had a bit of a chat before we were podcasting here, and I know you're in agreement. So let's just rip it off like a Band-Aid, all right? Our big winner, my big winner for this week is Manchester United. 4 wins in a row now. Unfortunately, Erik ten Hag's really got them purring too. And they look like they're going to be the real deal this year.
What they're doing is they're playing like those Manchester United teams of old, those Sir Alex Ferguson, Manchester United type teams, where they're not even necessarily having a lot of the ball. But when they get it, they're very clinical with it. Their counter-attacking is really sharp. So I think part of that is having Rashford leading the line. He's always really keen to run onto it. And with his brace against Arsenal, he definitely showed that he can be that front speedy forward poacher kind of player, which is exactly what you want in a team like that. And even in both games, you feel like Arsenal and Leicester, definitely had their chances to win or go ahead or anything in that game. But Manchester United, just when they got the chance, they went and they took it. And it's tough for me to see as a Liverpool fan, but it's one of those things. You've at the end of the day, we're football fans. You got to appreciate good football.
Absolutely, credit where credit's due. I wholeheartedly agree with both your sentiments there. It's tough, but you gotta pay the piper, and when they do the business, it's I don't want to say it's good to see, but from a general standpoint, it's good to see. From a football fan standpoint, from a Liverpool fan standpoint, sickening. But good for them. What do you think United's ceiling is this season? Do you think they can legitimately push for the Champions League this year?
I think they can push for the Champions League for sure. I think they've got the talent, and I think from the sounds of the various Ten Hag techniques, I think they've got the discipline, which they were probably lacking in the past few seasons.
Absolutely.
And they've kind of shored up their team. In the sense that I know Paul was saying that his that the signings weren't like spectacular or anything you'd write home about, but they've just solidified points where they were maybe a bit thin. They've got depth, and I think that's quite important in a Premier League season. You're playing 38 games, and in a match week like this where you play 2 games in 4 or 5 days, it can be pretty intense. So being able to have those players to come on as a sub, or even spot a starter, as we'd say in American sports, be able to cover for them. Then that's really good and really important. And if you have players that are proven at the Premier League level, as backups, then that's a fantastic position to be in. Puts you in good stead to go towards that European qualification.
Yeah, absolutely. They've definitely shored up some weak points. I think Ten Hag's really thrown a marker down by putting Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench. It's the first time since he was at United. The first time I think I read that he's had 4 or 3 or 4, I can't remember, straight games starting on the bench. It's strong management, and far be it from me to judge him. It seems like it's the right call. But that's enough of that. Paul's not on the podcast this week. We don't need to talk about Manchester United anymore. But we've had the sweet, mate. Sort of sweet. Let's get into the sour, okay? Have you got a loser for us this week, Callum?
I was tossing up a couple of things. There were 2 teams that got 0 points in their 2 match days, which was rough. I'll speak about them a little bit later, but right now, my biggest loser in world football this week is Thomas Tuchel.
Yes, absolutely, mate. Great pick. Hot off the presses, this one. You want to take it away, Callum? Let us know what's happened.
Yeah, sure. So in the last hour or so as of recording, it was announced by the Chelsea Football Club in a very simple statement. It's just we've parted ways with manager Thomas Tuchel, and everyone saw that and went, okay, this is strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a little bit more came out about it, and the new owners commented about it, and they said Yeah, look, it's marked our 100-day anniversary of taking over the club, and we've decided now's the time to go in a different direction. And I'm like, that's a really positive way to fire someone, but that's
what an odd time. Like, wouldn't you do it before the season starts? The 100-day thing just makes no sense to me.
No, it makes no sense, and it's such a bizarre decision. Because they gave him all this money. He made 9 signings with, £250 million, which is obscene.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, you lost to Zagreb, so gonna have to let you go, buddy.
It's so weird. So do you think that the Zagreb result had any weight on this sacking, or do you think it's the comments in the post-match press conference? That kind of, like, I guess what I'm getting at, do you think it's results on the pitch that have caused this sacking, or do you think it's a bit of backroom dealings?
There's definitely an element of both, I'd say. Thomas Tuchel, like a lot of German managers, is very perfectionistic. So as such, he's going to see a lot of things to nitpick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I feel like they knew that coming in. So I don't think that's necessarily what got to them. But I think partly he wasn't delivering the results that he wanted to. And I think it got to the point where they felt like he was making excuses and not making changes. I'd say he probably hasn't been given a fair shot to make those meaningful changes since the window's closed and that sort of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, since what happened in Zagreb and the comments he made after Zagreb, I think, he was teetering on the edge with the loss, and then he decided to launch himself off it with what he said afterwards.
So let's move on to my loser. And I'm sorry I'm doing this to you, man. I get a fellow Liverpool fan on the podcast, and I give my big winner to Manchester United, and I'm giving my big loser to Liverpool. Off the back of the 9-0 victory against Bournemouth, which was just wild. And I thought, what a way to turn your season around. We start now. We go from here. And, they kind of toiled to a very, very lucky victory against Newcastle United. And then just a dour 0-0 draw with Everton, where Jordan Pickford just turned into a brick wall. I'm of the opinion that this was never going to be a title challenging season for Liverpool. When they signed Darwin Núñez and sold Sadio Mane, the first words out of Jurgen Klopp's mouth was, he's got all the tools we like. He's not the finished product. We're buying for the future. And I think it's, Darwin Núñez is a different kind of player. The team needs to adjust to playing with a legitimate number 9 striker. So I think all that comes into it, but I'm just making excuses at this point. Just a poor week for Liverpool that started off promising so much.
It was a poor week, but I think you can take solace in the fact that, they looked very average and still took 4 points away. They managed to get a win against a pretty exciting Newcastle team. Eddie Howe's doing great things with that team. They've just picked up Alexander Isak, who's a fantastic striker. He struck and probably was unlucky not to get a brace in that particular game. And I wouldn't be surprised. They did have a 0-0 draw against Crystal Palace, but again, Crystal Palace have been pretty tough.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Newcastle surge up the table a bit.
Yep.
And probably take that loss quite personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in a good way. And I think with Liverpool, the chance creation was good against Everton. Luis Diaz was probably at his best I've seen him in that Everton game. So that's promising, at least. There's little pieces to build on. Harvey Elliott played very nicely in those 2 games as well. That kind of creative midfield dynamo that has been lacking due to, injuries and that sort of thing. So I think there's little pieces to build on, but you're right. It's not the standard that you'd expect, and it's disappointing considering, the last few years for Liverpool where they've been very, very good. They're just not quite at that same level, and it's kind of a bitter pill to swallow.
It is a bitter pill to swallow. I couldn't have put it better myself. You did make some good points there, though. Luis Diaz, Lucho, I think they call him. He's been fantastic this season. There's just something about him. He's got that X factor happening. Harvey Elliott is also a shining light, like you mentioned. There are a few worries, though. I thought Thiago getting a full preseason under his belt would really help him with his fitness issues, and he has become such an important player for Liverpool, particularly in these games where teams are happy to sit back and defend, and just play on the counter attack. He's just got a magnificent eye for a pass and has done it time and time again, and it's really hurt. And he's the wrong age to be getting injured all these times. I don't think we're gonna get a full season of Thiago Alcantara at the peak of his powers at Liverpool, unfortunately. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the winners and losers. It was a tough one for Callum and myself as a pair of Liverpool fans, but we pulled through, mate. There you go, winners and losers.
All right, so next up, we have, usually on the podcast you do a preview of the match days, and we're flying through the match weeks now. We've had ourselves a great game week 6 in the EPL already, and there's some really big fixtures coming up this weekend, and I think none would probably be any bigger than the two undefeated teams taking each other on. It's Manchester City hosting Spurs.
It's wild, isn't it? Manchester City, Erling Haaland is a cheat code, that guy. He is just not human. He just scores goals for fun. I was one of these guys that when Haaland signed for Manchester City, probably because of my Liverpool proclivities, I was like, well, he's going to find it tough in the Premier League. I mean, he'd done it in Austria, and, Germany's really a 2-3 team league at best. So he's going to come to the Premier League. He's really going to struggle. Boy, do I have egg on my face. He scored 10 goals already. He's averaging 1.25 goals per game, I think I read. He is just out of control, and he carried it over to the Champions League. Manchester City had a big win in the Champions League. This is going to be Tottenham's toughest assignment. Tottenham have been no slouches either. They've been fantastic this year. Antonio Conte has really built something. Tottenham, Spursy, that's a thing, right? I think they're going to do away with that moniker this year. If they don't win some type of silverware, I'm going to eat my hat. They will definitely be there or thereabouts come the end of the season, particularly if things play out the way I think they will, with Liverpool just going through a bit of a transitional season. There's a chance there for someone else to kind of rise up and kind of fight Manchester City for the crown. And why not Tottenham?
Yeah, why not Tottenham? Exactly. Spurs have been on the brink for years and years and years. And, I think it started even from the Harry Redknapp days when they had Luka Modric and they were 17th at about this point in the season. And, Luka Modric went and spoke to the media. He was only really learning English. He said, "I've not been good enough. I'm going to be better." And he was better, and they came 4th that season.
Yeah.
So since then, they've always been kind of in that top 4, in that big 6. That's been the narrative of the Premier League for several years now. And yeah, they've been in that drought that Paul mentioned, that Cubs-esque drought. But the Cubs did eventually win.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the year where the Spurs eventually win. They've not lost, which is amazing. And it's kind of scary to think that Heung-min Son hasn't been performing.
Yeah.
And they're still playing excellently.
Absolutely.
They've got extra help in the midfield. They signed Richarlison, who is obviously a divisive figure, but he's a pretty good player.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's helpful in some senses. Harry Kane's been playing well. Their midfield's looked a lot better. They've looked really tidy. They've looked industrious. They've always had a strong defense. That's always been their thing for several years. And Lloris is, I'd say, the best keeper in the world, and he's showed it in these last few match days that he's had. And they you were saying that it's going to be the biggest test for them, Manchester City. I think they're going to be the biggest test for Manchester City this year as well.
As is tradition on this podcast, I've prepared a few fast facts here. Manchester City have actually lost 4 of their last 5 games against Tottenham, which is as many as they had lost in their previous 19 games against Tottenham. Tottenham are a bit of a bogey side for Manchester City. Tottenham won home and away against City last year in the Premier League, as we know. They also drew with Liverpool at Anfield, which cost us the league. But, that's just me shoehorning Liverpool stuff in. So that's all I've got this week, unfortunately. But they're pretty big indicators that Tottenham are gonna really bring it to them. So usually this is where I'll give my prediction, but I'm gonna put you on the spot, Callum, and I'm gonna get you to give us your prediction first.
I think it's going to be 1-1.
1-1. Well, I respectfully disagree. I think this game is going to be super entertaining. I think there's going to be goals at both ends. With players like Harry Kane and Erling Haaland on the pitch, how can there not be goals? I think Manchester City are just going to be a bridge too far for Tottenham. And I think that they'll probably win 3-2 is my prediction. But that's no shade on Tottenham. Manchester City are going to beat a lot of teams this year by big, well, not even big margin. They're gonna win a lot of games this year. So it's no shade on Tottenham that I don't think that they'll win this one.
Yeah, they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to score a lot of goals.
Absolutely,
I think
mate.
you're right. The only reason I say 1-1 is because I think Tottenham's defense has probably been the best in the league so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if anyone's going to stop Holland and the Manchester City gang, it's going to be those guys. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is high scoring as you predict.
Yeah.
And I am totally okay with my prediction not being on point there.
So you say about the Tottenham defense, and just to that point, right? Like, it was strong last year with Romero, Ben Davies, and Eric Dyer, right? They've added Clement Longley from Barcelona, who's just a world-class defender who's only just gotten into the team. Davinson Sanchez is no slouch. They really, not only do they have a strong starting defense in that back three, but they've also got a lot of depth too.
And another thing, which I suppose you don't often associate with defense, but I've said it before and I'll say it again: Hugo Lloris is the best goalkeeper in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that elite defense does happen to let a Holland or maybe an Isak or someone like that in,
yep, you still got to get it past Lloris.
It's 50-50 chance, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the best in the world.
Yep, absolutely. Interesting. So we'll see how that one plays out, mate. But what do we got next? What's happening next, Belt?
Yeah, so it's quite a big match week. So we start with the early game of the match day. It's a London derby. It's Fulham hosting Chelsea. Too cool list, Chelsea. Fulham have struggled a bit to start, as you'd probably expect, but they've had some promising signs. Mitrovic has looked great. He scored a cracker of a goal over this last match week, so he's definitely a danger man there. And I think Fulham will see this as an opportunity. They're good at Craven Cottage, and because they've just sacked their manager, either they can come out firing or they'll come out flat, and they'll be hoping for the latter.
Yep, absolutely. I was going to mention the change in manager thing. Usually you get a new manager bounce, but there's no new manager at the moment, so it's kind of up in the air. Fulham have been okay. Just an interesting side note here. About 18 months ago, I run a website called theperic.com, and one of my contributors wrote an article about how great Alexander Mitrovic is. And I jumped on this very podcast, and I said, you might have read this on theperic.com, but this guy's a phony. He can't do it at the top level. But I'm happy to eat my words. He has started this season like a house on fire. I think getting that early goal against Liverpool definitely helped. And, Fulham do look strong. I do think that Chelsea might just edge this West London derby. I think they'll just get over the line, but Fulham will make it tricky for them. I'm going to go 2-1 Chelsea. What do you got, Callum?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure Fulham will score, honestly. I think it'll be 2-0 Chelsea. Okay,
we'll see how that plays out, pal. What do we got next?
All right. Next is one that you probably wouldn't traditionally highlight, but Bournemouth have had a great week, and Brighton have been the star turn of the season. So they're taking each other on. It's Bournemouth hosting Brighton. Brighton came off their big 5-2 win against Leicester City. Yep. It was 2-2 at halftime, and then they just absolutely shut it down like an elite level team. It was incredible. And then Bournemouth, after taking a big loss against Liverpool, have shown great mental strength. They've got 4 points from their last 2 games, and they're looking right back at it.
Brighton have been fantastic. They lost Cucurella and they lost Iswasuma, 2 of their best players in the off season. And they've just come out like a house on fire. I hope they're not one of these teams that die off. I hope they can keep it up. And honestly, I think they can. I don't think that they'll finish the season in the Champions League positions, but I think if they qualify for Europe, even the Conference League, that'll be a huge win for them. And there's been murmurings, you'd know about this, Callum. There's been murmurings about Graham Potter being the next big thing for so long now. And, I think he's got the perfect start to kind of to prove that those murmurings to be correct. I think Brighton will get the chocolates here. I think they'll take care of things pretty easily. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 to the Seagulls, mate.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think it's going to be a bit more higher scoring. I think Bournemouth are gonna they're still going to feel like they have a point to prove. I think when you lose 9-0, you don't feel like you feel better until you score 9 goals yourself. Maybe not all at once, but once you get there, you probably feel a little bit better about yourself.
Right. Yep.
I think Bournemouth are going to score, but I do think that Brighton will have too much momentum and too much class. Trossard, Gross, those really talented, creative players they've got. I think it'll be 3-1 Brighton.
Yeah, Pascal Gross, what a start for the season he's made. Yeah, absolutely. I hope your prediction's right, not mine, mate. That'll make for much more fun watching.
All right. So the next one I wanted to highlight, probably, makes a lot of sense for you and I to highlight. It's Liverpool and Wolves.
Okay. Seeing as you're a guest and you're a fellow Liverpool fan, why don't you give me your analysis of how you see this game going, mate?
So Wolves are an interesting team. Sometimes they're really, really strong. And, they've got some elite level players. They also have Ruben Neves, who's,
Fantastic.
One of the best midfielders, in the league, in the world. He's excellent.
Yeah, he's tremendous.
And he's playing for Wolves, which is kind of funny to think about. But sometimes they're very strong and sometimes they're a bit inconsistent. They have come off, I think, a draw and a win. So they've been in decent touch. And they're taking on Liverpool, who've been struggling. I think in light of this, Liverpool will feel like they have a point to prove. And I think they'll win quite comfortably. I think they'll get a 2-0 win. I think either Núñez or Firmino are going to score. And then it's going to be like, okay, we're refocusing now. This is where we need to go.
Yep, absolutely. Geez, I hope you're right, mate. I think a lot of how Liverpool perform will come from whatever momentum they lose or gain from their match against Napoli tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, Australia time. I don't share your confidence as much, but I am a bit of a negative Nelly when it comes to Liverpool. Even the year they won the league, it wasn't until after the COVID shutdown that I thought, okay, we're going to do this. I'm happy to be wrong about this, but I think it's going to be a draw. 1-1 I'm going for. Interestingly, and I'm not sure if this deal got across the line or not, Diego Costa has signed for, was looking like he was going to sign for Wolves. Do you know anything about that, mate?
I've read a little bit about it, but I haven't heard anything confirmed. I've just... I've seen probably a bit of a facetious meme about it where it says, I don't care what the signing on fees, just show me who I can stamp on.
He's one of those players. You love him if he plays for your team, but geez, you hate him if he plays against you.
Yeah, he's a bit of a rough fellow, but a talented player, and a strong classic target man kind of guy, which I think they've hoped to have with Raul Jimenez, and he hasn't quite hit that mark.
Yep.
So I suppose it would make sense and fill that need. So it's a matter of if it goes through or not.
Yeah. Raul Jimenez, such a sad story. The skull fracture that he suffered. He just hasn't been the same player since then. And, you can't judge him too harshly on that, because once you experience an injury like that on the football field, I imagine, and, I'm not trying to be a smart ass here, but it's all above the shoulders. You know what I mean? It's between the ears. It's a mental thing for him at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's rough to say this about a professional football player, but he does play with an element of fear, and it's completely understandable. It's completely justified. But yeah, it's influencing him, and it's pretty rough because he was a great player before that big injury.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree.
All right, cool. This has been going nice. love previewing things.
Yeah. It's good. There's nothing wrong when it hasn't happened yet, you know?
Exactly. I can just guess things and say, oops, I was wrong. And that's fine. I guess another one that we can highlight would be Arsenal and Everton.
Mm-hmm. So, oh, sorry, mate. Please.
No worries. I was just going to say, Everton will see the 0-0 draw as a good result.
Mm-hmm.
And Everton have been struggling a bit, just getting cohesive attacks together.
Mm-hmm.
I think their passing has been a little bit not up to scratch. I think with Everton, you expect them to kind of have a more free-flowing kind of short pass, long pass kind of system. And they've been trying to do that, but they've just not been hitting those killer balls.
Yep.
And that's kind of been the big difference. So I think at this point, Arsenal having finally dropped points, taking a loss, this is probably the best opportunity Everton have to steady their ship and maybe get a good result like an away draw against Arsenal.
Is that what you're picking, mate? An away draw?
As much as I'd love to, no. I think Arsenal are going to respond, and I think Arsenal are going to win 3-1.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, you took the words right out of my mouth, Callum. I was going to predict that exact same scoreline. I've got two questions for you regarding Arsenal and Everton. Not so much about the game coming up, but part one is Frank Lampard. Is he just is he a sheep in wolf's clothing? Is he a top line football manager? Is he destined for greatness, or is he still getting by on his playing reputation?
Look, it's hard to say. It's hard to say with Frank Lampard. He's had a very mixed managerial career so far. And I think you're expecting a lot out of, what's still a fairly young manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
He says the right things. That's good.
Yep.
He seems to have decent body language, which I think is, better than a lot of coaches you see. So, he's got that going for him, but I just don't know if necessarily the tactical acumen is there. I think he's trying to do a lot of things that he did when he was a player at Chelsea, and that doesn't fit Everton. That doesn't fit, whatever kind of system he wants to do. It doesn't fit the players that he has. And I think, a great manager really takes what players they have and makes them the best that they can be. Sir Alex Ferguson is obviously an example of that. There were some players that Sir Alex Ferguson had who were very average players, but played fantastically for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. The Alex Ferguson comp is perfect. We are Liverpool fans, but, you got to respect greatness. And the fact that he won the league in his last season with a squad that David Moyes couldn't even get into the Europa League speaks volumes. Excuse me. With Frank Lampard, the issue that I see with his teams is there's no definitive style. I know that that's not the be-all and end-all. There's lots of managers that have had great careers that don't have definitive styles and adapt to opposition and things like that. But I guess it's a trend at the moment, particularly with young managers that you see coming through. They have a style and they try and imprint that style. I take your point that he's trying to do things the way things were done at Chelsea when he was a player there. But I don't think you could necessarily say that he's trying to get them to play like Chelsea. I don't think you could say he's trying to get them to play any specific way at the moment. I mean, they were very much a batten down the hatches, counter-attacking team at Everton, I'm talking about, when he took over last year, and that worked for them. And this year, it's been a mix because I was very positive about the Everton game for Liverpool because Everton had been trying to play this expansive passing game previously, but they just didn't do that against Liverpool. They reverted to, I don't want to say reverted to type because my point is they don't have a type, but they reverted to the batten down the hatches counter-attack kind of play. And I think that's a problem. This isn't a Frank Lampard podcast. I'll move on. My second question to you is, are we putting Arsenal on that same pedestal that we've put Tottenham on previously.
Even though they lost 3-1 to Manchester United, I think it's probably one of the best 3-1s you're ever going to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely
they
agree.
were still very good, creating lots of chances. De Gea made some pretty good saves.
Yep.
And yeah, I think they're going to see that result and go, you know what? We're good enough to be that elite team, and we're going to show it again. And we're going to really push Manchester City. I think at this point, Manchester City would be favourites. But we're going to really push them. We're going to push Tottenham as well.
Yep.
And we're going to try really hard to keep in this top 3 conversation and this championship conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Arsenal is, and listeners to the podcast will be like, shut up, Stuey, you say this all the time. But I think what Arsenal have absolutely nailed is they haven't had itchy trigger finger with their coach. They've given him time. They've let him recruit and build a team, much in the same vein as, there's a different level for Pep Guardiola, but he did it too. Jurgen Klopp did it. That he was given time. He wasn't an instant success by any stretch of the imagination. And I just think that Arsenal are doing it the right way. And I think, if they do end up trailing off a little bit this year, I think that they'll still be in the Champions League conversation come May next year. And I think that, success and seeing that just annoying Arsenalness of it all at the top of the table, it's just a matter of time. And I'm a big fan of the way they're doing things down there.
Yeah. I've always quite liked the way Arsenal play. They've always played really positive style of football. Obviously they've changed their style a little bit with Arteta, but it's still, positive. It's still lots of passing, and it's really attractive. And it's that kind of football that you want to see succeed.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I think that's often been what's been the frustration with Arsenal is they've kind of tempered off in quite a few seasons because they haven't been able to keep up that work rate. They've had injuries, series of different unfortunate occurrences for Arsenal.
Yep.
But, like you mentioned, sticking with a coach, I think is quite good. Basically, a great example of that is they stuck with Arsene Wenger and they had an undefeated season.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
I'm not saying the same is going to happen with Mikel Arteta, but I think if you put your faith in a coach who you say and you think they're a really good coach, they're perfect for our system, I want them to take us forward, you'll get success. And Liverpool saw that with Klopp.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just speaks to the point. And it's so weird because we're just a couple of guys talking about football here, and we notice these things. You give a coach time, you eat some losses, you have some tough seasons, you drop out of Europe, no worries, but you give a guy time, and if he's good enough, which I guess is where, the murkiness comes into it a little bit. But if he's good enough, he'll get you there eventually. Just, it's not going to happen overnight. Instant success. Football is so reactionary these days, particularly with coaches. And, coaches just are getting sacked left, right and center. I mean, the 2 sackings we've had this year have been a little bit different with Tuchel and Scott Parker. But, it's only a matter of time before a team goes on a 4-game losing streak and they sack their coach. Do you know what I mean? And that's just, it's detrimental to a club's development. So big ups to Arsenal for what they're doing down there.
So those are our highlighted preview matches. So look out for those ones this coming match week.
Absolutely, mate. I cannot wait. Callum, thanks for filling in for Paul this week. I've got to tell you, mate, you've given him a run for his money, and we love to have you on again. How about you let the people know where they can hear you, where they can see you, where they can find you, what your socials are. Just give us a big old Callum plug, mate.
Usually, if you want to hear from me on a day-to-day basis, I suppose I'm on Twitter. I'm at Callum_Logie. If you want to hear me talk about cricket with another talented young man, Rory Dennis, I'm on the Top Edge podcast. We release those every week. We're also on the socials at the Top Edge podcast, so give those a look. You can see clips from the Top Edge podcast on the Edge of the Crowd YouTube channel, and obviously edgeofthecrowd.com. I write there, Stuey writes there. Really good stuff, really, really exciting kind of new approach to sports journalism. And Those are the kind of places where you can look for me if you're interested.
Absolutely. So jump on Callum_Logie at Twitter for sure. The Top Edge podcast. Any cricket fans out there, it's the best cricket podcast going around. If you're not listening to it, you're missing out. So definitely do that. And Callum's basketball musings on Edge of the Crowd are definitely must read. So definitely get amongst that. But that's it for another week. As per usual, follow the Twitter account at @AfterET_podcast or follow me at Stuey is sick of it. You can follow Paul at Paul M. Banks, tweet at him and say, hurry up and move your shit, Paul, and get back to the podcast. Also, please check out edgeofthecrowd.com, Australia's leading sports news and pop culture website. Follow them on all your favorite socials at Edge of the Crowd. Be sure to get your latest football news at thesportsbank.net. And while you're at it, why don't you hit them up on Instagram? The Sportsbank is on Instagram now at SportsbankOfficial. Show the third member of the pod some love by following at Otis Ginger Tabby on Instagram. If you enjoyed the podcast, please click that subscribe button. And if you really dug it, please take the time to give us the 5-star rating. Callum, thanks for joining us this week, mate.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be on.
Absolutely. Can't wait to get you on again, mate. Maybe you and I can do a pod together and gang up on Paul.
Sounds like a fun time.
But until next week, he's Callum Logie. I'm Stuart Kavanagh, and this has been After Extra Time.
He has nailed that! Sheer ferocity! Boy, that flew! Well, sometimes when they're hit, they stay hit. Kieran Tierney